Hi, I'm Hartmut Weiler. I am a senior investigator in the Blood Research Institute in Milwaukee. And I am one of the disciples of Robert Rosenberg. And I met Bob in 1989 when I was looking for my first postdoctoral experience abroad. And he convinced me to start in his lab by asking me a simple question, which was at that time, what is it what you want to do? What is on your mind? And from there on, we had a 6-year ongoing discussion and conversation about what is going on in the field of hemostasis. I know Bob as an intense scientist who was incredibly enjoying the kind of work he was doing. I'm going to give you just one idea. He once come running in and telling us about some paper he had read, which turned out was about how smooth muscle actin worked. And his enjoyment and enthusiasm about science really permeated the entire laboratory. And that was one of the reasons why I stayed for 6 years. Now, I was asked, like, what is the legacy of Bob Rosenberg in the field? And it really started with his thesis, which was how prothrombin is converted into its activated form, thrombin. And I encourage you to read this paper. The co-author is his later wife, Judith Rosenberg, who actually worked with him in the lab for a long time. And so there he went on to actually basically spread concepts. He developed the F1.2 assays, which is an incredible tool to measure the activation state of the blood coagulation system. He's certainly best known for his work on heparin and its interaction with antithrombin, where he found out what is actually the anticoagulant active component of heparin. And maybe less known is he's the co-discoverer, together with Dr. David Kuder, who is now in Mass General, director of hemostasis there of the lab. He's the co-discoverer of thrombopoietin, which was really like a 8-year process to get, in the end, beaten by, I believe it was like 3 to 4 weeks to publish the actual sequence. Now, the legacy of Bob, how I look at it, is actually something else. He inoculated basically everybody in his lab to start thinking. He's inoculated us with ideas. And if you look around, the concepts of hypercoagulability, the concepts of endothelial cell diversity and how this comes about, how this is regulated, and in general, how does the coagulation system manage to stay, controlled over a long lifetime? And so one of the fascinating papers he always cited to us was actually one of his earlier work, where he had looked at really old people, so I feel kind of close to that, where he looked at centenarians, 80 to 90, some 100-year-olds, and measured coagulation system activation. And what he found there is that the coagulation system really works in hyperdrive in many of these individuals. Nevertheless, they were all happy and healthy. So, and that was actually something that fascinated him. What is it that regulates over time as we age the activity of the coagulation system? And, the other real legacy of him is the trail of individuals he left all over the United States and in Europe, who went through his lab and moved on to occupy positions of influence, where they influence the way in which science is done and where it goes. And I just mentioned, for example, Michael Simons, professor of medicine at Yale, who just published a wonderful review about what is it that keeps the vasculature quiescent. To mind comes Jian Liu in University of North Carolina, who has become one of the world experts in heparin structure and how to actually synthetically make heparin. And this is, or pick David Kuder by himself, who is the director of hematology, as I mentioned, in Mass General, who worked with Bob on TIPO. And all these individuals picked up their ideas in Bob's lab, and we all remember the discussions that sort of happened aside from the lab bench, and it was just talking about ideas. And that is something I think which really set him apart from many people. He rarely looked at a laboratory notebook to go over the details, but he always asked, so what does this mean? And where does this lead? And so this is really what he accomplished, that whoever came through his laboratory picked not only up on the basics of hemostasis, but we all were forced to think beyond what we were just doing. And I really think that is about it. I should mention also his mentorship. There is a wonderful article published in JTH, I think last year, July, where colleagues who, like me, went through his lab, talked about their experience with Bob as a mentor. And I said, well, you know, he is what I would call a mensch. And what he did for me and his wife Judith did for me is they introduced me to the concept that as first of all, a German biologist, I have actually a bare responsibility for, maintaining ethics in our work. And I'm thankful that he pointed this out, because I was surrounded by people who are only a generation removed from their parents being in a concentration camp. And I had long discussions with Judith about this. And nevertheless, I was welcomed to this him as a friend. And I believe this happened to many, many people that went through his lab. And I'm actually equally grateful to all the people from whom I was able to learn while being in Bob's lab. And that is what I have taken from that.